Tensions have flared with Beijing after it was revealed a Chinese fighter jet fired flares dangerously close to an Australian Airforce surveillance plane last month. China has accused Australia of hyping its warplane interception with the Australian aircraft. It was conducting routine surveillance in international airspace. Joining us live now is Adjunct Professor at the Australian National University's Strategic and Defence Studies Centre, the retired Admiral Chris Barrie. Really appreciate you making the time, Chris. Thank you for your time. How dangerous was this incident, in your view?
Well, this incident, of course, follows other incidents that have been taking place over the last few months. For example, the Canadians had an incident early last week. The Taiwanese have seen lots of incursions into their air defence zone, up to 30 a day. And so we're not being singled out for special treatment. But what's really alarming about this most recent report is that not just the approach by the Chinese fighter jet, but also what they did. And I happen to have been involved when I was CDF in the EP3 incident, where an American maritime patrol aircraft like the P-8 was damaged and landed on Hainan Island in 2001. And on this occasion, what happened was either a miscalculation or just dangerous flying. The fact that the Chinese aircraft dropped chaff in the pathway of our maritime patrol aircraft, and that chaff was ingested by the engines of that aircraft, tells me that this is becoming a dangerous game. And so what happens now when there is an accident? It'll either be a misadventure or a miscalculation or a deliberate provocative act. And I'm afraid to say this looks like we're tending towards deliberate provocative acts, and that is alarming.
So how much detail, Chris, do we actually have about where this occurred, how close the planes actually came to each other, and what actually happened, how our pilots dealt with it?
Well, I haven't got the precise detail. You'd have to go to the agencies to find out about that. But I think close enough. If the aircraft ingested chaff, droplet, aluminium strips that are dropped as chaff, they are designed to float in the air. But if it was that close and the aircraft couldn't avoid the chaff, then that is pretty close. And I guess the point I'm making is that was a deliberate act. That wasn't a misadventure. And it wasn't a miscalculation. That was a deliberate act. It's a provocative thing to do.
So if we view this as an act of aggression, what can we then do about it? Have we actually seen any breach of international law here?
Well, as far as we're concerned, it's getting close to that. And we certainly registered our concerns with Beijing. They've responded by saying we're overhyping the incident. But I go back to say, I was CDF when the EP3 incident occurred. That was a maritime patrol aircraft, just like our P-8, and that Chinese jet crashed into that maritime patrol aircraft. That might have been a misadventure. It might have been a pilot who just got it wrong. But on this occasion, you saw a deliberate act, a provocative act, to drop that chaff in the pathway of this aircraft and to deploy the flares.
Do we read much into the timing of this as China looks for some sort of reset of relations with the Australian government under Anthony Albanese, do you think?
Well, I see a bit of a disconnect with the Chinese overtures that we've seen over the last couple of weeks on this particular act. And I think I'm just putting it in the context of what goes on in the South China Sea and the approaches to China now. So the Canadians have been through this with an Aurora aircraft. The Taiwanese are seeing multiple infringements of their air defence zone by Chinese aircraft. One of the recent reports said 30 aircraft in a day making those approaches to Taiwan. And our maritime patrol aircraft, which is on a mission, the like of which we've been doing over many, many years, decades indeed, now also being subjected to the same pressure from the Chinese. So you could read into this, I think. They're exercising aggression in order to make it clear they don't like us operating in the South China Sea or on the approaches to China, even in international airspace and over international waters.
So, Chris Barrie, when you talk about misadventures in the South China Sea, how great a risk is there that one of these misadventures leads to something much more serious in terms of war, conflict between our countries?
Well, it's a bit of a stretch to say a misadventure might turn into conflict, but you can't always eliminate the possibility. A misadventure, in my view, is when something which is being properly carried out becomes an accident for something that goes wrong. For example, crossing the bows of another ship and the ship might break down and all of a sudden there's no time to act, etc. A miscalculation is when you really press your luck on some of these things and you get far too close, and this is what we're starting to see in these air-to-air incidents, allowing an aircraft like our P3 or the Aurora aircraft operated by the Canadians no time to actually manoeuvre out of a situation. That becomes a miscalculation, and that's what can lead to an accident.
Chris Barrie, the former Chief of the Australian Defence Force, really appreciate you joining us with your insights and analysis. Thank you so much for making the time.
Okay then, have a great day.